Thank you everyone for coming this afternoon. I know the weather's been just fantastic here in Chicago for all of us. Hopefully there haven't been too many slips and falls out there. We're having a discussion today on really the realities of the industry as it's evolving from a contractor perspective. And so just by show of hands, how many people in the room are TC contractors or integrators? Okay. Engineers? Thank you. Manufacturers? All right, so we have a good mix. Well, welcome everybody, and want to go ahead and have our panel members introduce themselves briefly and tell us who you are and what your role is.
Thanks. I'm Josh Redding. I'm the president of Sunbelt Controls. We are a system integrator on the West Coast.
I'm Matt Montgomery. I'm the sales manager for the automation department at Gardiner. We are a bedrock Midwest systems integrator with a large new system sales presence.
My name is Chris Meilstrup. I'm a sales engineer for Long Building Technologies in our Colorado market. Long is a HVAC equipment rep and then controls the contractor in a couple of our states.
Good afternoon, my name is Pranjal. I'm vice president of Modern Niagara for our integrated building technologies business. We're in Canada across multiple provinces, looking at controls primarily, even though we're part of a mechanical electrical contractor.
Yeah, so the format of today's discussion is we're just kind of going to go through some of the things that are really present for us as contractors, and we also want to hear from the audience. So if you guys have questions, feel free to interrupt us. We're anticipating the talk to go for about 45 minutes, and we'll have an open kind of Q&A session time at the end. But again, if you have questions in between, feel free to go ahead and interrupt us. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I know one of the things that has been talked about for many years is, as a contractor, what is the difference between a traditional temperature controls contractor and a master systems integrator? There's been this kind of movement in the industry that everyone wants to be a master systems integrator or a super integrator. And so I wanted to go ahead and ask Chris to help us understand, at least from a contractor's perspective, what is that difference?
All right, thanks, Scott. I'd like to give the open-ended tough question to the sales guy, let him try and answer. To me, I think master systems integrator is a tough thing to define, and that the definition's evolving as we're trying to execute it right now. If you look up online on some of the publications, you find various definitions that say something to the effect of the master systems integrator is somebody who's taking these disparate systems and managing the IT and OT network and trying to put it all in one place and give a single interface. It's depending on your company's capabilities and the skill sets that you have and the services that you offer, it could have a little bit different flavor depending on what your in-house capabilities are and what you can execute. I mean, for me personally, business development, I'm got my head buried in specs all the time. So, an easy way I think is who's doing the Division 25 work. We're starting to see it a lot more, and so I feel like the person who's handling that responsibility, I think, would be who you would define as the master systems integrator. What that looks like is going to kind of depend from location to location and customer to customer. It's a moving target. It's evolving. We're seeing a lot of new things come up and new challenges that we're giving our people. With security issues, energy issues, new fault detection, all these other challenges that are getting lumped into the responsibilities of this person, or the company. But I think in general, it's the person that's trying to bring, the outfit that's trying to bring all these different systems together, make it work, keep it safe, and keep the owners happy with a single source responsibility.
Thanks, Chris. Now, I would pose this question to the whole panel here, and you kind of touched upon it here, that there's a huge skill set that's really required of a traditional technician, right? It's gone are the days where we're just loading a VAV box and checking out the room sensor and making sure that we have airflow. It's like the demands now to be placed on a traditional controls technician are really challenging. So I'm wondering, just the panel, how are you all meeting kind of the training needs of diversified workforce in that regard? Yeah, we're all like
Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. I think even before this era of master systems integrator, I think the load we put on our techs it was immense, and everything from database creation to graphics to programming to troubleshooting to point-to-point commissioning. There's such a broad level of skills that we need to get them trained and competent on. And now we've just layered in all these other cloud-based technologies and master systems integrator concepts, which are now beyond sort of the traditional HVAC space. Like, we could step into lighting, we could step into security. Those are massive sort of reaches for our teams, but when you tie into business systems or in healthcare, you tie into healthcare systems, like that's, our technicians need to be aware of that and how they need to interact or not interact with certain systems, and it's very, very difficult. For myself, it's about trying to get our teams very focused on what they're doing and have champions on different skill sets, but it's still a challenge to figure out what skill sets we need in this space.
So you're talking a lot about skill sets and the various needs, but like, can we get nuts and bolts here? There's one of the biggest needs I always hear in our industry is training. Like, how are you all meeting the training demands in your companies for these various skill sets?
Yeah, it's not easy. There's a lot of programs out there. Some of you guys know of ASP and SBA, and we've used some of these programs to try and better educate our folks, but it really comes down to us doing it internally. So we're having to basically create our own training path lines so that we can elevate our people to the next level of being able to understand the ins and outs of what it really takes to do master systems integration, and and to get them there is not an air conditioning mechanic downloading anymore. So it's I think we all have the same struggles. That I think there's a lot of good programs out there and things that you can do, but I really think it all comes down to how you develop it internally in your own organization.
Yeah, I agree, and it's interesting because it relates to the type of talent that we're trying to acquire within the organization. There's always internal conflict and dialogue. Do you recruit somebody who's strong in HVAC, that traditional temperature control mentality, or do you recruit somebody that's strong in IT networking? And there's no two training programs are the same, but we've struggled with that to try to map out a standardized onboarding process, because we're bringing in these two different ideologies and trying to groom them into this systems integrator or massive systems integrator. So that's our experiences.
So you kind of talked about personnel needs and recruiting. Where are you finding luck? I mean, you kind of touched upon it a little bit. So the traditional HVAC path, the IT path, you're pulling in people that maybe have a stronger computer science background. Where else are you finding luck at kind of recruiting people to the industry?
As of now, our highest retention rate and success is recruiting people with an IT background and teaching them HVAC and controls. But it's been amazing to shift over the last couple of years with them.
Pranjal?
Our main recruitment is still the traditional sort of automation college courses, but similarly, like, we've had a tech that came out of the gaming industry, and so great integration background and taught them HVAC, and it's a great use case for a case study for us of how we want to diversify. Honestly, I got people in our team which are with commerce backgrounds, gaming backgrounds, and IT backgrounds, electricians, technologists. Again, it doesn't matter. Like, we have so much variety in our industry that we can pull from almost anywhere, and then teach them the basics and then supplement them, right? So if you've got the IT strength, we'll supplement with the HVAC. If you've got the HVAC strength, you can supplement, or you can either supplement or have them focus on the HVAC. And I think that's how you organize your team and focus your teams. We can't have this expectation, and I feel it in my company from our contractors. Like, one tech can do everything. Just put them on any job, they can do everything on every job. That's not reality. It's just not possible.
Thank you. So we wanted to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about kind of what is the role of a master systems integrator in our industry as it relates to driving owner decisions in purchasing and acquiring their building automation system and what their strategy might be. So Pranjal, I wanted to go ahead and give you an opportunity to discuss that.
Yeah, first thing I'm going to say is I really don't like the term master system integrator because I think it's too broad. I think for myself, as a converted sort of temperature controls, I consider our organization as we're system integrators. We live in the HVAC space, we live in the lighting space, and we know how to integrate systems in that space. But when we talk to owners, there are companies that are master systems integrators, that I consider master systems integrators, that are connecting to, like I said before, to HR systems or other business systems that are outside of the traditional HVAC lighting operational technology space. So it makes for an interesting conversation with those clients, because one, you have to understand when you're having a conversation, what are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to just achieve their energy goals, or are they trying to consolidate their systems? And really it comes down to their needs and also how that organization is structured. You've got large organizations that might have internal teams. Healthcare's like this, higher ed is like this, and some large commercial are like this, where they have good internal teams that can sort of have their own tech stack. But there's a huge base of owners up there that aren't that developed and need that support from contractors like ourselves to help deliver a tech stack that we're comfortable with. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have, or that I definitely have as a contractor, is finding that balance point between delivering a tech stack that's sort of owner-driven, and the challenge for myself as a contractor is how many tech stacks am I going to be comfortable delivering? Training my teams on different technologies, different integrations, different graphics platforms, and being able to do that repeatedly, or if I have an end user that has this tech stack, making the decision, do I want to invest in that technology, training my team to be competent in that? If there's a defined path to multiple projects, probably. If it's one project and competition all the time, I got to make the call, because I'm not going to do that investment. So that's a challenge. And then the other side is maybe finding clients that aren't fully built out with that, and having my internal tech stack that can say, hey, here's some things that we know how to solve for you. Here's the tech stack that we know how to deploy, and let's work with you. And it's not about always deploying that exact same tech stack. In my mind, I don't lead with the technologies in that tech stack, I lead with the business outcomes. And I say, here's the business outcomes that we're comfortable deploying. There's different technologies that we can do, whether it's they have an IT VPN technology, we'll do that, but we have the alarm management technology and the dashboarding technology that we can deploy. It's about having those conversations about the business outcomes and the alignment of the training of our ability to deploy those tech stacks.
So you kind of brought up this idea of working with owners, right, and helping them understand which direction to go and what is really our responsibility as contractors. I'm curious how your interface with like the engineering community, what that looks like, and how are you driving that?
It's been very complicated in Canada, I've found. It's still very much a consulting community that's driven by mechanical consultants that haven't fully understood the building automation space. We live in that mechanical world, but most of the other technologies are in the electrical consultant space. And I just went through a project where we're contracted to the mechanical spec, but all the other integrations in the system are the electrical spec, and obviously two different consultants didn't talk to each other. And we end up having to figure out who's the player on the electrical side and talk to those system integrators, they are actual system integrators on that side, and figure out, okay, where do we overlap, how do we connect, and try to have a conversation, which is very difficult in a bid spec environment, about why are we doing it this way? I know it's spec this way, but we're duplicating work, and let's work together and define that out to either the owner or the consultant, say, no, we don't need to duplicate this. We're doing redundant stuff, and but this is the end goal that we're trying to get to. So let's put in a change to just get to that end goal. Let's not just go and sort of complicate things for the sake of checking off boxes for a black and white spec.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You kind of touched on this also, Pranjal. Yep, was there a question? Yes?
As it relates to the MSI, we don't really have like any kind of governing body that says, if you're an MSI, you do these core disciplines, right? So as you guys as a panel think about, when I think of an MSI, these are the disciplines that thou must do, like at a minimum, lighting, controls, like where do you kind of draw the line and say, if you're going to really truly be a master systems integrator, you need to do these disciplines, lighting controls, fire protection, security, mechanical, and then how much of the drive for master systems integrators is coming from the market as opposed to coming from conglomerates or coming from the industry saying, we should because we've got these companies that do all of these things, so we need to have one technician or one company that can do all these things. Is the market, are the owners actually coming to you and saying, I really just want one person that can do my fire protection scheme, my control scheme, my lighting, everything else, and I want one pane of glass to do it all through?
Well, I'll let the panel tackle that, but I think one thing you said there is it one company to do it all, or is our role as system integrators one company to integrate it all, right? So, anybody want to tackle that?
From my perspective, I think, especially in the bid spec world, if it's in the Division 25 spec, I'm bidding the Division 25 spec. Inherently, I have to figure out a way to do it all. I can't always do it all, and that's where I have my ecosystem of software partners, essentially, and sort of subcontract internally to sort of manage it, because the level of asks and case studies, and it's getting way too complicated for the growth of my team and the skill sets of my team.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the owner's intelligence, meaning if you have a really intelligent owner and he is trying to solve for a solution that, may encompass, some business system or, something, then they're going to drive you, whether they're trying to save energy, whether they're trying to do something for, a use case of, hey, we want to operate in this fashion. They typically dictate what they want to do. I think us as master systems integrators from the contracting world, predominantly to your first question of what all do we need to do? We need to be prepared to do anything that is part of the building infrastructure, in my mind. But you may not, and a lot of contractors, don't do this, but some will go into the business systems and, put in Active Directory, do the, all the things they may want to do as a company, where others just want to stay in the building infrastructure because they're contractors, right? So it is difficult, and, we do play on both sides of the fence, but I think the intelligent owner is the one who typically drives the master systems integration. As a whole, they just usually don't get what they thought they were getting after they hand it to the engineer who wrote the spec.
Related to that,
We do, we typically don't see it in a plan and spec type environment. We see it in a design build. So we meet with the owners, understand their expectations, their solutions, and then as a design build contractor, we put those, you know, entities together, whatever they might be, right? Because sometimes water and gas, and I mean, it's all kinds of stuff, right? So we predominantly see that more in design build, not in plan and spec. In plan and spec, it's still this division and that division, and it seems to always come that way, even if it's fully integrated, in my experience, anyway.
Our experience has been the exact same thing. I have not seen it in the plan spec world, but certainly in the design build.
I think in the plan and spec world, the most we see is you shall integrate to the lighting. And it's one line and
Yeah.
it's open for interpretation, and it's a conversation that has to generate from that. And whether that's a hyperlink or a full-on mapping of every lighting point is open for interpretation and discussion, unfortunately, not done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the true master systems integrators work more like a consultant engineer than like a contractor. So they typically go into those C-suites to have those conversations. Even if, you know, it does come out plan and spec, which we've seen and done, you know, typically those conversations are happening at a higher level because they want the enterprise integrated in their facility. So.
Paul?
So I am from the engineering world. We do a lot of Div 25 specs. And I think the problem is nobody really understands on the engineering side where that fits in with the owner and the GC. Because a lot of the things start at the owner GC level, right? And if the GC is not really on board with the whole MSI concept, they don't have a clue. So project's already gone south, right? So I think one of the things what we've seen as a whole, our firm specializes in that Div 25 spec. We've taken years to build this out the proper way. It's not one line. I guarantee you, if you look at our specs, you'd be really impressed. The drawings, the packages that come with it. It's a lot of things. It's the Revit drawings, it's the specifications, it's the integrations, how that communication protocols are. Is it like the managed device or not? All those different things. But the most important thing that no one's talked about yet is the racing. Who has the responsibility and the ownership versus just being informed, or is it a decision maker in that process, or coordination with that? So I think that's a big part of our built environment problems that we see with Div 25. There is no racing, so nobody really knows who's responsible for what.
I think to the GC comment, it's one thing that we actively try and do is we try and talk to the GCs and move our control spec or our controls contract direct to GC. Mm-hmm. Take us out of that mechanical only, mechanical sub, and be at the same level of the electrical contractor and the mechanical contractor to have those conversations. Because in that relationship, you can then work with the GC to say, you know what, there's impacts to me as an integrator from both the electrical and mechanical, and I'm not losing that priority of the conversation when I'm sub to a mechanical, and they don't care about the fact that the power's not on for my control system. Right? From at the GC level, I can sort of influence that. So there are certain GCs that we're working with that allow us to have that level of influence, and that changes the success of the projects drastically for us.
I agree, but that's not always work that way.
No.
Most of the time they don't.
Most of the time.
So Pranjal, earlier you were talking about prop tech. I was wondering, how does, what are you seeing as far as trends in the industry with regard to cloud, and what is the interaction with the cloud, and what trends are you seeing from a contractor perspective?
Trend is every software suite that we're looking at is connected in the cloud somehow. We work in the on-prem world, but all the tool sets that we need to really help us address our skills gap are all cloud-based. And so we need to be capable and have our policies and our best practices in our organization to make those connections to those software suites and make sure they're secure and know how to work with them. And like, there's tools that we try and use because on the cybersecurity side of things, like you see specs, and the specs are all driven around sort of final product. Not a lot of specs are driven around sort of how you get to the final product. A lot of the tool sets that we use for commissioning or connectivity are during construction. And so those are cloud-based because we don't have an infrastructure to connect to. So we have to deal with that. So I'm not sure if I fully answered the question.
I think there's just a general trend that we're all seeing in our industry, that these technology stacks that we're dealing with are more and more becoming cloud-based. And I know that there was a whole session dedicated to cybersecurity before. But when I pose this question to Josh is what do you see, are the challenges and pitfalls around, from a contractor perspective of this cybersecurity question?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a contractor, we've been working on cybersecurity for 7 years now. So we felt that, the risks are, what we all know, right? Which is the exposure, somebody just got a DSL line and hooked it up and now it's exposed to the world and anyone can get to it anywhere. And there's no security around any of that. So from the contractor's perspective, we took the proactive approach that we were going to need to provide our own cybersecurity governance. So we have a cybersecurity board, we have cybersecurity committees, we have security documentation on what we do, how we do it, engineer drawings of how it gets done, and then really what we do is try to make sure that it's secure. And we use some cloud components to do some of that, but the risks that we all have is, you guys have probably all heard of like the Target breaches or, some Walmart breach or something that all came through HVAC controls. Well, the reality is, even though we proactively work on the cyber side with our customers and educate them on, the fact that they are exposed and it is their network, and we want to help secure it and help them stay secure. But the reality is, regardless of what happens, ransomware, a breach, your name's going to be tied to that because they're going to go, they're my controls contractor and they're the ones that set up the network initially. And so we feel as Sunbelt that we needed to take a different approach than waiting for the owners to take their own. And to do that, we spend an exhaustive amount of time with consultants and doing a bunch of pen testing. And you guys, I'm sure through the show, have seen a lot of industry cyber systems. They're all doing something to help secure the networks. And so, if you haven't seen any of those, you should look. Some of them are challenged more than others. We did run a lot of the industry things through the tests of pen testing and just doing different cyber tests with third-party agents that really got us back to where we feel is the best to approach is where we're using an IT industry firewall, and so we use Palo Alto Networks, but we looked at Cisco, we looked at others, but the reason we went that road for us was every time we tried to do something other than that, the IT people went, what? I've never heard of that. What is that system? And why do I want to put that on a network and that I own or secure? And when we say we're going to put Palo Alto Networks on their system and add a firewall to their OT system, and the IT guys are like our best friends, right? It's like, great, we know what that is, we know how to work with it, and you know, we can figure it all, but they have the ability to do the same because it's, you know, it's industry product. So, you know, there is a big risk to cyber. It is challenging, even though we have gone through the process of putting all our documentation together and educating our owners. We really needed a top-down approach to the company because it's really a company culture that has to change, where, you know, our techs still today are accessing some system because that's what they do. Right? So we're having to go back to all the existing locations that we have, and if nothing else, just educate the owner, right? Hey, here's the vulnerabilities we see. You know, here's the hardening we would suggest. You know, we'd suggest doing 2 MFA type situations, and, you know, Active Directory and SAML, and, you know, whatever it is that they're comfortable with, because the just calling it up and being exposed to the world, we know that one day we're going to get the call that, you know, Target got breached, and it was a Sunbelt Controls project that was doing the HVAC controls. So we're trying to get ahead of that with really just educating all of our customers, right? Even if they were installed 10 years ago, we're going back to them because we usually do service or do something with them, and we're just educating them on, here's your exposures, here's what it is. And those ones that really don't want to pay more, take something serious, add any other complexity to it, and they want us to just dial up, difficult to do this, and some of them get frustrated, but we tell them we're going to roll a truck. You know, if you want us to still get into your system and do something, we're going to need to roll a truck and get on site to do that, because we don't want to be part of the exposure that you have on your own network, right? And we lose some customers over that, or we have in the last 5 years, but not a lot. Most of them are appreciative that we're trying to look out for their best interests, and, you know, sometimes they fight with, well, that's your network. It's like, well, no, actually you paid for it, but so, you know, it is difficult, but it's a journey, and it is a culture of getting everybody, you know, from the top down to buy into it so that we can mitigate the risk for ourselves as contractors, and then really just, you know, help educate your customers, which is the most important piece to me, is to make sure they understand the vulnerabilities that they have in their networks that we may have installed, but, you know, they chose to pick up a DSL line or something and expose it to the world. So use Shodan, use, you know, whatever you can to go find all your stuff, because it's what we do. We have thousands of connections, and we know what they all are now, and, you know, we do that securely as a company. So we have different, you know, we have cloud service that basically authenticates so that whether it's our technician or the owner, that they have to authenticate to our cyber cloud, and then they get access to their building. So, you know, to do that is difficult if you can't manage it through something like Active Directory or something a little more easier, because then you're dealing with everyone that wants to hop in. So we have a couple different things we've done on our own. We have something that we call Sunbelt Connect, which was done by our internal developers, but you know, we talked a lot about people and where do we get them. We had to create a whole different team of people to deal with all those cyber functions and the hardening and how we do things. And, you know, some of them were old system integrators, and some of them were IT folks, some of them were from the cyber side of the world, and you know, that group collectively kind of put together our solution, just because we believe we're all at risk, so are our customers.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
So I have a little follow-up question for you. So, you know, you kind of alluded to these tough conversations you have to have with existing clients where they have a system that might be exposed, vulnerable, to the world, as you said. How are you protecting Sunbelt? Like, if I go meet with a building owner and the guy's like, I'm not going to do anything, and then they have a breach 6 months later, how is Sunbelt protected?
Yeah, good question. So we have, I guess what we call liability waivers that we deliver to the owners. We try to deliver them now in every proposal as part of our T's and C's. There's a cyber section in our T's and C's, so when we're doing a new job that we've at least made them aware. A lot of times, they don't want to accept it or they don't want to sign it or, but from a legal standpoint, we've made them aware, and we do that through an email that is tracked, and we have the actual waiver that gets sent to them, whether they sign it or not. We at least let them know, and typically we try to get face to face with them, have the conversation, and a lot of times, they just don't understand, and they're like, well, why do I care? It's like, it's my control system. And it's like, well, it is until your stationary engineer takes his laptop and plugs it into that network, and now he's going out to the internet and watching YouTubes or something, and then gets hacked, and then he takes his laptop and sticks it back on your private network, right? So it is difficult conversations, but that's how we try to protect ourselves, is at least just to make them aware and to have evidence of us making them aware.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any kind of insurance?
We do. We have cyber insurance, which is not cheap. It's kind of like having fire insurance if you guys have that. But it's definitely not cheap, but it is something that's required for us. We do some government work. We do work for Wells Fargo's and Citibanks and others that we're on their networks, right? So even if it's their own. So we do have some cyber insurance, but it's it's costly.
How does the conversation change, Josh, between when you have an owner that has a dedicated OT network versus their BAS as part of their main building infrastructure with business systems on it?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot easier when we separate the two. But the reality is, and I guess I've been doing this long enough, I've probably seen everything happen at this point, but I've seen the OT network and the IT network that are supposed to be totally separate get put together way more times than I could count. And, and then we bring it up, and those are some of the things we're able to do now with the technology is to see those things, to be able to disable ports in the firewall, to be able to disable ports in the switches that we put in for the OT network. So if there's an empty port, it's not active because that's what happens. Some guy goes, oh, I'll plug it in from what I think is the internet over here over to the network that he thinks he's on, which is the OT network, and then all of a sudden he just stuck everything on the same network. So, it's definitely a different conversation when they're segregated, but we still believe there's a risk, and we try to communicate that to our customers. Because a lot of it they just don't think about. Like you're sitting on your couch and your engineer pulls it up, your building automation system, and happens to be VPN to your actual private network at the same time, and just things happen. So it is a different conversation, but I feel like they're a lot more receptive to it when it's their network. When we do segregate, they tend to go, well, I don't really care if they change my air conditioning set point. And it's like, okay, but I'm still just letting you know that as soon as somebody plugs here and here, like you're gonna commingle everything. So. So it is different conversations, but you know, when it's their own network, they're appreciative of, thank you, because you're not just protecting the OT network, you're protecting all my systems and, you know, all their business operations.
So our responsibility as systems integrators, right, to really be aware of best practices when it comes to cybersecurity. And it, again, it speaks to what the rest of the panelists talked about, is the challenges of training and bringing people up. So I want to shift gears a little bit. The session immediately prior to us was on artificial intelligence, and it's something that's been kind of the soup of the day, so to speak, and there's been a lot of talk about ChatGPT and its implications in the built environment. And so I wanted to pose this question to Matt, like, what are you seeing with regard to like client expectations and artificial intelligence and BAS?
Yeah, it's we see a rapidly changing expectations for the deliverable on AI. It's a really large vertical for us. It's a 7-figure plus vertical for us, Gardiner, with our AI services. And we're really using it as a post-install service tool, almost like a retro commissioning service tool. And what we're seeing is clients' expectations kind of shifting from a standard fault detection through trends and alarms to fault detection and preventative diagnostics. And we do well at it, but we don't do great at it. And I say that because it's so rapidly changing. Like we can access the data, we can analyze the data, we can tell somebody we don't think your space is performing well, and we can come up with reasons why we don't think it's performing well. And we can roll a truck out and have that tech be very strategic with what he's looking at. But what we want to be able to do is preventatively detect that and make changes. So we see our customers asking us for that on a weekly basis. And frankly, I think that's what the expectations are going to be from a deliverable standpoint. And I think that if we're not delivering that, I think a customer has every right to kick us out and bring in somebody who will. And when I talk about AI, I guess I kind of divide it into 2 different categories. Artificial intelligence and applied intelligence. Applied intelligence being able to analyze the data and preventatively diagnostic, but having people intervention with it. And then artificial intelligence having human intervention. And unless there's something I don't know, we're doing people intervention on it right now. And I think it's interesting when we talk with our end users, I think all the buzzwords with AI, I think they think machine learning. I know there's technologies available control-wise where there's AI built into it. But at least for us, we just haven't got to a place where there's not going to be engineers looking at said data and making decisions on it. So I think for us, we've just adopted the mentality that we need to be very flexible and very nimble when looking at how we're positioning it. And I think if we're not, we're going to be left in the dust.
Do you see any application of artificial intelligence beyond kind of FDD platforms? Where else are you seeing artificial intelligence, especially on the customer side, where they're wanting it to be applied? How?
That's where we're using it the most, and we are getting questions. Is there any programming capabilities with artificial intelligence? And we're fielding engineering questions. Is there a sequence of operations that can be optimized through artificial intelligence? We're not actively doing that. We'd love any feedback from somebody who is, but we're seeing those questions start to come up.
I actually have maybe a follow-up. Do you find your customers are actually willing to pay extra?
No.
For it? And I feel that's the biggest challenge is we have to apply all this other technology, but we're actually constrained to the cost and budget models of historical building automation systems. And that, in my mind, is one of the biggest challenges as a contractor. No one wants to pay us for applying FDD or AI or all these tools that we need to internally train our teams to execute on, deliver, and pay these SaaS fees or software fees. And we've got to do it for the exact same budgets that we were doing it with standard DVC for the past 10 years.
And how do you sell that to potential end user or even a contractor in a plan and spec environment, right? Where you're trying to include some of this functionality that the market is demanding, but it's not in the specifications, or if it is, it's simply a one line, like you said, connect to the lighting, must have FDD capabilities, right? Yeah. So, thank you very much to the panel. I want to go ahead and open it up to the floor to see if there's any questions from the audience. Yes?
I guess sort of dumbing it down about 3 steps, but we're talking about engineering and plan spec world. Are you finding decent sequence of operations from anybody in the plan spec world? And is there a resource for consulting engineers to grab those and they can put something out that makes sense? Because we're going 5 steps above with AI and whatnot. It's essentially a design build role for sequence operation program. I guess what's your experience?
It's really odd. I sat in on an AHR session for Guideline 36, and I think that is a great starting point for standard specs. But what really turned me off as a controls contractor is they're presenting and say, you know what, engineers, copy-paste the Guideline 36 sequence. And actually leave it on the controls contractor to make all those nuances to what's actually applied and what's purchased for the project. And I think that's a very dangerous thing, and we see it all the time. And then the other complexity is you've got that copy-pasted Guideline 36 or any other built sequence. You've got commissioning agents that are trying to deliver that to the letter. And I don't feel people are actually stepping back and saying, does this actually make sense to what has actually been procured for the project? Because it's great to have a standard sequence and all these things, but sometimes what's procured, the equipment, the mechanical, the design changes during construction, you've got to be able to adapt to that. And historically, from what I've seen, change orders don't adapt.
Yeah, but from that, just AI, those of you that have something like ChatGPT, type into it, rooftop air handler, 40 VAVs, reheat, blah, like literally if you type it in, it'll spit out a sequence for you.
Yeah, it just makes sense.
Nah, not half the time, but
How different was that
20 of
from,
them?
but in my mind, how different is that from Control Spec Builder, which has been around for 20 years? It's in my mind, it's probably along the same lines, but I remember using Control Spec Builder, and you can have the radio buttons to say, I want this sequence, and then you get the air handling unit that has the coils in a different arrangement. You gotta be able to adapt to that.
Any other questions for our contractors? We answered them all, huh?
Right. We do believe there's going to be AI to do programming and functions like that you'll see come from manufacturers because they're already talking about it. But I don't know how much, do I trust it? Similarly to how well is the sequence written, right?
It could be any worse than the engineer running it.
Yeah, this is true. But, they're talking about doing AI to where you'll type it in and it'll program the whole project for you, right? Which maybe some efficiency there, but, it'll take a while.
I think from a contractor point of view, our responsibility is to make sure that the install is done well, the I/O is set up correctly, we've got the base sequences. Where I see the real value of AI in the future, because I don't see it today, is overriding set points and looking at sort of other parameters just to say, okay, you know what, optimize your chiller plan, however, and you got all these other like chiller plant optimizers. So how they write back the sequence, the set point updates, that's how I see the AI impacting our industry. But our responsibility as contractors is to make sure the data is there, the point-to-point's correct, the IO is all configured correctly, and let that layer on top.
Any closing comments from the panel?
Thanks for your attention.
Scott,